Hello, everybody. It's wonderful to be with you. I'm Ferial Haffajee of the Daily Maverick and very, very happy to be speaking about Charlotte Bauer's wonderful book called How to Get Over Being Young. Thank you so much for joining us today. So I thought I might just share a little bit of how I know Charlotte. We worked together at what was then the Weekly Mail in difficult but also quite heady times. Charlotte was the arts and culture editor and very much a part of sculpting that magnificent title at the time. She had her pulse on the finger of a lot of what has come to define and shape our country. And I always remembered thinking, that's exactly who I want to be as I became a journalist. So very, very welcome, Charlotte. And congratulations on your lovely book called How to Get Over Being Young. I know lots of people who have read it, and they've said that it is funny, that it is wise, and that you felt like a best friend writing it. So very welcome. I'm so happy to be with you.
Very happy to be here. Thank you for having me, Farah.
Thank you. I wanted to check with you first. Is this your first book? And could you tell us a little bit about why you chose to write this specific book?
It is my first book. I hope it's not my last. And I think, why did I start writing it? Because nobody was paying me anymore to do anything else. And that sort of end of my professional working life kind of coincided with me starting on this journey of midlife and thinking, well, what am I for now? And it took me a little while to work out what I was for, and that was for writing and the feelings and changes in my life I was starting to experience at the age of 50, being bossed around by my grown-up children, being the oldest people in a meeting, oldest person, were quite, I just thought they were very interesting. And I thought that I would try and write as honestly and unflinchingly as I could about what I was experiencing without embarrassing my children any more than I had to. That's where it began.
And you, what's the reception been to the book? Because I think it came out in about August last year, a difficult time because we were still in COVID, and then we got whacked with the Omicron virus, which I know didn't make it easy for authors to take their books out into the world.
I've had wonderful reactions to the book, social media, in particular, because as you say, it was on the one hand quite a difficult time to launch because there was no opportunity to do live events. And it's really such a kind of girlfriend, chatty, personal book. The one or two live events I have managed to do, outside in full hazmat suit, have really been wonderful to actually engage in conversations as opposed to just telling people stuff. So it was a difficult time for all authors and publishers as well, but I think it's been fine.
That's excellent. So the Charlotte that I know from the few newsrooms where we've worked together is very much a person who enjoys the water cooler, who enjoys the workplace, who enjoys conversations, and especially creating communities wherever you are. And that all people are drawn to you, but you create very close circles of women friends, either in the workplace, and I know you have a wide circle of friends, and you bring that into the book, right?
Yes, I think that, well, thank you. I love gossiping around the water cooler, and I think it was one of the things I missed most about
I was so shit at that.
You were okay. You're all right. And I've always cherished my women friends as well as my men friends. And at this time of change, I just thought how interesting to find out what my girlfriends are going through, whether their experiences of all of the changes, and it's not just about the Wicked Queen mirror and the new wrinkles. It affects everything, your working life, your identity, your family life, friendship. So I just became more and more fascinated by my girlfriend's experiences, and then the women in my family. I mean, I have 3 younger sisters, and I have a kind of very, I don't know, crazy interesting mother and aunt who are in their 1980s. I mean, in their 80s. And, my aunt still wears thongs. And, my mother started wearing a baseball cap to hide her bald spot. And they kill each other at cards every weekend. And by some dark magic, they managed to have made their bodies listen to them, as opposed to us listening to our bodies. And I thought, all of these fabulous women have stories to tell that can contribute to the story I'm telling. And that was fantastic.
That's lovely. So your mom and auntie, as she's called in the book, are very key characters. I read them avidly. How close are the characters we meet in the book to the real life people, and what did they say when they read the book?
That's such a great question. They are entirely true to life. Ferial, remember, I've only ever been a journalist before, so even though this is nonfiction, it was my first attempt to stitch together a narrative of sorts, and you would know that. But I spent a couple of years working on this, and I actually interviewed my mother and aunt. I interviewed my sisters. I mean, I would put everything down on paper about my mother and aunt, about sort of sex and death and cosmetic surgeries, theirs. And they were so open and frank, and it's all true. I mean, and I was like, as a journalist, I was like, this is gold. I don't even have to make this shit up. It's all there. It's real. So they're very real.
That's fabulous. So I'm just going to welcome some of our guests today. Karen Holman, Rose Stein, Erica de Villiers, who says, hi, women who run with the wolves, Vanessa Ford, Vishanti Sopel, Prince Khadebe, Karine Sinclair from Australia, Andrea Lanro, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, Kim Isaacs, Deline Ellison. We very much look forward to being with you today. So I wanted to ask whether you might read a passage from the book so that those who are with us today, Charlotte, can get a feel for it.
Well, I'm going to go to, this is the part in the story, quite late in the story, where husband and I have been through many conversations, and we're going to try and stay together in our marriage by living apart. I have moved to France, to the countryside, and husband and I have just set up house, and now it's time for him to leave to go back to South Africa. Parting was harder than I thought. At the airport's 10-minute drop-off zone, husband heaved his pink and white floral suitcase out of the boot of the car, a birthday gift he'd once given me that I refused to have anything to do with. But husband was not easily embarrassed. A quick hard hug and he was gone, bustling off to Terminal D, wheeling his silly pink suitcase, looking like Miss Venezuela. At the entrance he turned and waved. It wasn't a romantic movie farewell type wave, more of an urgent flapping. Perhaps he changed his mind. Perhaps he was missing me already. Perhaps he wanted to stay. And in that moment, I'd have taken him and his pink suitcase back in a heartbeat. I opened the car window. What? Don't smoke in the car or in the house. And with that, he turned and disappeared inside the terminal building, and I couldn't wait to see the back of him. It was dark by the time I got back to the crumbly stone house on a long and winding road through unfamiliar hamlets that briefly flared in black emptiness of the countryside, past the undulating vineyards, along the twisty, unlit lanes with their deep, invisible ditches, and down the bumpy track that led to the house that I could not quite yet call home. It was very quiet out here in the countryside, no cars whooshing by, No lights twinkling in the inky sky beyond the still curtainless windows. No humans in sight or sound. Just strange animal noises, an owl's hoot, a sudden scurry across the roof. I turned on the lamps and poured a whiskey. I heated up a frozen pizza and ate my half. Then I remembered husband was gone and ate his half. I sprawled on the couch and lit a cigarette. At last, I was alone. At last, I'd been left alone. This was what I'd wanted, wasn't it?
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you, Charlotte. So you write about, so does 50 whack you? Does turning 50 hit you quite hard? I mean, not that exact moment, because I think we were working together a little bit at the time, and I know you told me some of it, but does that moment, is it quite a turning point for you and in your life?
It was for me, Ferial, not to say it is for everybody, because I'd sort
Yes.
of come to the end of a career. I had moved continents, countries. My marriage was at a kind of fairly vulnerable stage. So yeah, those things were, you know, sort of almost cracking up faster than my face, but that was going too. So it was for me a fairly significant moment.
Could you say a bit more? And your friends were also experiencing this as a significant moment. So I want to share with you something that happened to me around that time. I looked at my life and I wondered how much content it had. I was loving my journalism. I was enjoying being an editor. But other than that, all my relationships, unlike yours, they were lacking somehow. They hadn't been fed. They were nutrient poor. And so I decided I was going to give up being an editor because I wanted to fill in all the spaces which I felt I had lost out on. And I stepped down from City Press, and I remember a very high-powered chairperson and CEO of many things, many places. She said to me, "You're really going to miss the title." But actually, I found in the 6 years or so since I did that I don't at all. Did you feel the removal of your career as the defining part of you? Did you feel it weightily? And what about the stories of some of your friends? I just want to see if I'll get to it later, but it seems one of your friends said that when she stopped being a high-powered lawyer, she wasn't quite sure how to fill that.
That's so interesting, your experience. I think I did struggle a little bit in the beginning because, like you, Ferial, my career was so much a part of my primary identity. And it was quite hard. I mean, not least, you know, all my clothes were wrong for the French countryside. I mean, I had all these little skirts and blouses and jackets, and suddenly I was completely out of my context. Obviously, that was a fairly flippant moment of it.
You mean that cute black biker leather jacket didn't work in the...
That didn't happen easy. I mean, that you had to go through a few years of menopause to get to the black biker jacket. I mean, that was all part of the learning curve. That was the arc. But I did. But like you, Ferial, I certainly didn't miss the titles and the kind of, you know, the you know, who are you with? Where are you? Which conference? I mean, none of that stuff had ever been particularly interesting to me. What was interesting to me was writing. And it took me a while to work this out. My core talent was writing, and I still had it, and I could still do something with it. And it became easier and easier. And now I can't imagine being back in an office.
Thank you, Charlotte. So I just want to read a couple of bits. I have a really lot of highlighted bits from the book here. And so you say, considering what was in the Botox and fillers I had, the thought of ingesting a bit of horse pee didn't bother me unduly. Dr. B handed me a condom full of ice and told me to put it on my head. Forehead, he said, seeing my confusion, to numb the area I'm going to inject. I think it's were men alone guilty of insisting we remain decorative or get off the stage, or did we also? Tell me about some of your experiments in the world of modern aesthetic treatments. Huh?
That's such a very delicate way of putting it, Ferial.
Sorry.
I mean, yeah, been having Botox on and off for a few years now, but because again, I think the shock of the new, whether it's physical or about friendship or about work or other relationships, is you get this little fright when you see what's happening. I did, and Botox was a lot cheaper and easier than actually trying to get really healthy by making any particular effort. But I think I've got to the stage now. I mean, I'm in my early 60s now, where the face isn't quite, matching the neck. And I think the fear does have to stop somewhere. And I'm hoping that this is sort of the last phase of my menopause. Hate that word. It's so clinical and really doesn't describe how interesting and complex this time of life is. That I'm kind of reaching new places of acceptance, adventure, and shifting focus more and more as I go along. Never stop learning.
Absolutely not. And I'll get to menopause in a bit. I just want to say Beverly Europa's joined us. Awesome. Definitely on the book to buy list. Looking and sounding good. Charlotte, Cheryl and Aiton, our former colleague. Oh, for a water cooler moment with you both now that we are of an age. Ruth Sachs, have you begun? Yes, Ruth. Daniela Massens, hi Sue, hi Cynthia from Pietermaritzburg. Lots of congratulations, Charlotte, from Daniela. You've done it and you've made the shift. Sue Grant Marshall joining us, and David Schlaberberski as well. Tasneem Mossam, hi all. Tasneem, very good to be with you. So lots of people there. I do want to ask you, Charl, so I read Brené Brown a lot a few years ago, and her first works and her TED Talks are about the power of vulnerability, but the difficulty in writing vulnerably. Now, I know that we said a little off mic that that's not how you'd seen it, but there are parts of the book which I found to be beautiful because they were vulnerable. So I'll read a few, if that's okay with you. It says, but for now I was in transit, midway between clinging to the woman I'd been, while warily watching another woman materialize in my mirror like ectoplasm at a seance. A woman who looked oddly familiar, but whose identity I couldn't quite put my finger on. We certainly weren't yet on first name terms. Another. This is about a friend. These are coming out to some of your interviews, conversations with your friends. You speak about a loss of confidence, a loss of influence, a loss of interest. These were words I heard over and over in conversations with my girlfriends. Some said they were bored with their long-standing careers that seemed to have got stuck on repeat. Others felt they still had a lot to offer, but were getting too old to be considered for the juicy parts.
Well, now that you're talking about it and sort of playing some of my thoughts back to me, I have to say, with the vulnerability and the frankness that came through in the book, I had a lot of help from my agent, who made me rewrite this for 2 years.
Wow.
After I delivered her what I thought was a more or less, complete manuscript.
Yes.
And she very much made the point. I mean, I've done quite a lot of humor writing, and I think it started off as a little bit of a romp.
Right.
All the fun.
So it is quite light, all the fun.
Very.
Yeah.
And she said, where's the shade? Where are the darks? This is
Wow.
not just a sort of ha, where are my glasses? Whoops, they're on my head, hot flush.
Yeah.
This is not a joke. And she really, really helped me to dig deeper into more reflection as I was trying to reboot my life and to just be more, honest about things. And
so
that's
she
nice.
She acted like a Charlotte to you. That was my experience of you when writing very often, is that you would say, go deeper. And it's not an easy thing to do, I realize now. And also, I guess as a journalist, I have found it incredibly difficult to write in the I voice and to be taught to do so, because it's easier to keep it on the surface. It's easier to report very in data investigations. But when you're forced to go inward and then tell that story, it can be both liberating, but quite a scary thing to do as well.
Absolutely. I mean, as a journalist, and I mean, unlike you, Ferial, I've never really focused on politics and investigations. I've done profiles of interesting people, and that more sort of feature style. And having to write in the I really made me think, my God, some of these amazing people I've interviewed, I hope I haven't offended anyone. So easy to toss out a remark about how they came across to me. But to be on the other side of the camera, it was uncomfortable at times.
And you do it so well. I'd like to talk a little bit about how you write about Clive and your marriage. And I must say that was the part where I wasn't sure if this was fiction or whether it was non-fiction. Writing about the rigors of a partnership at midlife and how difficult that was to navigate, and taking us through that process was really quite something to read. Was it easy for you? And then you make the decision to live in separate continents, which seems to have been really important and a building block for your marriage.
Oh, that's a great way of putting it. I think that is what happened. What happened to my marriage? Long marriage, it's long, huh? And both going through changes and wanting different views from different windows, just sort of saying we love each other, but we kind of got to a point in our lives where we want very different things, and being privileged enough to go and seek them. It was certainly difficult as the story got deeper with all the coaching and guidance I had, to think, how's this going to read to Clive, husband, as I call him in the book. But he was very cool with everything. And I think, gosh, that's so interesting. You thought it might be fiction at that point.
It's because I know you and Clive, you like my
and you just
model couple, man.
Perfect couple.
Absolutely.
I mean, I wrote my truth, and it didn't always align with his version of events, but he never wanted to change anything. He was like, that is your story, that's your truth. Some of it I disagree with, the way it happened or why it happened, but it's your book, baby. And so I was very grateful for that. And being apart brought us closer together, sure.
That's beautiful. So there was a part that made me a little sad, and that's how Johannesburg, which had always been a city that I'd loved through your eyes, from the time when you were telling us about the coolest places to go when we worked together at the Weekly Mail. You were a city girl and you were a Johannesburg girl. But at some point, the city morphs and becomes something which pushes you out and takes you elsewhere. Now, I recognize that the times mean we can go live in many places. But what was your experience of Joburg at that time, which felt to be closing in on you and constricting you?
Well, I think partly to do with my age. I mean, you know, I don't want to be kicking up my heels in a nightclub anymore. And I think from that point of view, Johannesburg still is young, buzzy, vibrant, nightlife-y, exciting place, edgy.
Very edgy.
Whereas I found that as I got older, there was less to engage my interest. Things harder to access, places harder to go to. So I think that was very much part of me and aging rather than judging the city so much. But yeah, over the years, how did I feel? By the time I turned 50, how did I feel about being in South Africa? Trapped, guilty, scared, bored by turns. And it was hard to write that because I was very aware of being a South African writer and not wanting in any way to diss my place, but in the spirit of being as frank and unflinching as I could be about my family, about myself, about my relationships. Yeah, I had to say those things for me.
I really learned from that because I've always felt like, oh, I can't write this stuff because it's unpatriotic and we're part of the making of this country. But actually, it's a lot of work sometimes. And I really like. I want to just tell you a little bit more of what's happening in the chat. People saying, Penny Phillip, my friends and I, 60 plus, are also doing the feeling stuck in a loop thing. Anita sent, when will the Kindle version be available? It's available already. I put it on pre-order in August last year, so I could be one of the first. Carol Steinberg, congratulations, Charlotte. A wonderful achievement. Can't wait to read. Marlene Gracie, hello from Stanford, where your face is okay and age matters in a good way. Joe, which Breen Brown book? I'll get it for you, Joe, and have it sent to you. Sue Grant Marshall wants to interview you. I'm sure that would be good. Beulah Tambadou, more webinars like this, please. It's relaxing and feels like seeing one's Joburg peeps. It's kind of therapeutic. Marie Gray, hello from Parkhurst. Ingrid Kiwi, Erica Davids, and then lots of people joining our show. So I'm going to go to some Q&As now. Oh, no, it's which Breen Brown book. I'll find it for you. I just want to read a few more bits from the book, Charlotte, which I loved. Some said they were bored with their long-standing careers that seemed to have got stuck on repeat. Others felt they still had a lot to offer, but were getting too old to be considered for the juicy parts. I'm reading it to repeat because then it says, then again, few women I knew of my age were ready to get out their rocking chairs. Rather, they wanted to reinvent themselves, ignite new purpose and passion, find new ways to use their skills and experience to do something completely different, while we still had options before the email informing you of the non-negotiable early retirement package landing from the HR department. So, what was your answer to this, Charlotte? How did you check it all in, really? I mean, you left South Africa. Where did you go to?
Yeah, I mean, I left South Africa, leaving my job, my last one being at City Press, with you, Ferial, as the executive editor. I loved it, but because of all these other things happening in my life, I jumped ship, which meant having to give up my full-time job, obviously. If that had happened in the pandemic, you might have kept me on.
Definitely. I've thought a lot about this. You can the world, it's also made things more possible now.
In some ways. It might not be our oyster anymore, but it's a clam with a lot of potential.
Absolutely.
So yes, and as I said earlier, it took me a couple of years to realize that I did still have chops, legs, juice, and that I would focus on my own writing, and whether it ever went anywhere. I mean, I got over the fact that nobody paid me to pitch up to work anymore. And somehow, whatever we tell ourselves to the contrary, you, as a professional, you are valued to the tune of. And I found that really important, to get paid to pitch up to work. So
why though? Because we live in the time of the Great Resignation and the gig economy, which would allow someone with your chops and smarts, etc., to pick up the kinds of work you wanted. So how come that was still so important to you to pitch up somewhere and be paid for it? I guess on a monthly basis.
Rent.
Okay.
For a start. It's I don't know, it just made me feel more valued, and suddenly being on my own and writing away for a couple of years with like, well, I don't know if this is ever going anywhere, if anyone but my mother will want to read it, was quite hard. I had to rethink my value to myself and whether I held myself in some kind of esteem, because nobody knew or cared that I was doing this. And that was great in the end. It was horrible in the beginning.
In the end, it worked out, but the book is about that process. You also go run a gorgeous Airbnb and become a cleaner and a hotel keeper. So share that journey with us.
Well, in a way, I mean, that was a great adventure. And, I'd find myself with a sort of head down the toilet bowl, scrubbing away. And I'd think, you know what? I kind of like this, because my job now, unlike being a journalist, is to make people happy. All I have to do is make people happy. So that was cool. And I met some amazing people. And I'm kind of an obsessive compulsive cleaner. So it really worked for me as an alternate career.
So you I don't know France very well, but you end up buying a house. I think it was in the south of France. So you share a little bit about that, because it sounded wonderful to me. But how did big city girl go to a very different locale?
I've never stopped thinking about that question, I can tell you. It was wonderful at the time, and it was now more than 10 years ago, because I needed to be left alone, to quote Audrey Hepburn. And it was quiet, it was peaceful, it was away from some of the things that troubled me or that I couldn't deal with anymore. And of course, to most people, I mean, what a dream, what a wonderful thing to do, to go to this beautiful sort of place in the middle of nowhere, really, but surrounded by villages and history and fantastic food. But in the end, I mean, my son came over once and he said to me, "Don't you get bored?" And I hadn't really wanted to admit that to myself after a few years, that, I was never going to take up gardening or lie in bed wondering about the shrinking bee population, or, sort of climb a tree, that I was a city girl, and that it was too isolated for me. So now we're looking to buy something a little closer to the town, to the big town.
To the town. So I must say, when at City Press, and running a Sunday newspaper is a 24/7, 365 job. And when you left us, and I was so sad, I imagined your life in a flowing white linen dress, basket in front of your bicycle, and you going to the market. Was that your life?
Pretending to be Juliette Binoche. Well, I tried that line.
Exactly. I did. That's
and I did get a bicycle with a basket on the front, fell off it like before I got up the driveway. That was the end of that. No, that wasn't my life. I mean, no? Particularly when it was fantastic. It was a great place, but I went to the big supermarket instead of to the markets, because you could get toilet duck toothpaste and, sort of fantastic fresh fruit and vegetables all in the same place. I got lazy. You start to take certain beauties and things for granted. Long white linen dresses in where I live. No, would not have worked. More sort of like your holiest old jumper, in order to sort of climb over the builder's rubble. It was, yeah.
Okay. And then Auntie and your mom come to visit. Tell us about that visit a little bit.
Unforgettable. Well, it was very, very hot, as southwest France gets in the summer, and they'd sort of arrived in their sort of good wool jackets and stockings and, sort of polo neck sweaters. And, try as I might, you couldn't really get them to take them off in public because they said, well, what if people saw them, sort of exposed flesh? And I said, what people? Look around. There are no people. So at which point they got into their night dresses and moved into the garage, which was the only cool sort of room in the house. Set up an ashtray on the washing machine, threw down an offcut of carpet. And, I was like, what are you doing in the garage? We're in southwest France. And they were like, well, it's very cool in here, darling. We like it in here. So they spent most of their time there. And when they weren't there, they were flirting with sort of weather-beaten men in espadrilles in the nearest village, where I'd drop them off to have a cup of coffee and come back 2 hours later and find them drinking brandy and flirting. So, yeah. No, they were...
My favorite
really
characters. But you also COVID knocked, so you'd expected that it would be a place where more family would come to, because most of your family is in England or in the UK. I'm not sure where. But actually, that doesn't happen, right?
Not now because of the pandemic, because Mum and Auntie, despite their sort of gusto, are too old to travel. They just can't put up with the sort of airport and the 4-mile hike to the gate and, people frisking you at security and, they're just not up for that anymore. And I think it's part of the reason why yet another change, yet another adventure may be coming up, because although my family did come often, it was wonderful. It was a wonderful way to stay in fairly close contact with them. Life changes for everybody. And it's just not quite the rowdy, rambling family extended home that it was intended to be anymore.
And you felt quite lonely, as you said. I just want to tell you a few more comments. So Barbara Meredith, I love the south of France and want to live vicariously. Where were you living? You can say or not. And from Jean, Greta Garbo wanted to be left alone. Audrey Hepburn was a private person, but she's not sure if she said that, and it may date her a little bit. Penny Phillip, takes bravery to take the leap to leave a regular job. Somebody else asked to be private. I wrote my memoir entitled The Arc of Our Paths Growing into Wholeness at age 65. Resonates with what the two of you are saying, particularly about writing vulnerability. Jan says, keep going. The 70s are so liberating. Can't wait. From Susie White, thank you, Charlotte and Ferial, for giving us all a sense of belonging. From Jill, for me, Josie is a place where I can comfortably meet friends across the age decades without feeling like an old person. Palesa Velikazi, I now know that I am not alone going through this. And I think what Palesa speaks about is something you said earlier, this being that while the menopause can be defined medically, it's a much bigger life change than I think any of us anticipate. So my doctor said, lean into it. And sometimes I go to him and say, no ways. How did you find what people, I think, euphemistically call a change of life, Charlotte?
Well, obviously, and not least from our guest's comments, it's a universal thing. Everybody goes through, but there are no hard and fast rules as to how we sort of transition to older females, get to the other side. And we all do it differently. And some of us do embrace the changes or let our grey hair grow out. I've decided I'm way too old to have grey hair. Or sort of, it's just different for everybody. And I certainly wasn't trying to impart wisdom and inspiration to anybody, but I got a lot of wisdom and inspiration back from readers and from some of the wonderful women who were featured in the book. I don't know if that answers any of the
absolutely.
comments.
I was gonna like go full grey, so I have some grey, and my hairdresser said no, not yet. Yeah? so tell us about, Charlotte, that time you went to the hairdresser. That's such fun. Huh?
Well, yeah, I've always had kind of extramarital affairs with hairstylists, let's just say. And it always ends in tears. And I always cheat on them with someone else before they get a chance to fire me. But as one of my friends once put it, the drama of our hair, a woman's hair, is kind of funny, kind of sad, kind of pathetic, and absolutely true. I don't know any women who don't have some kind of relationship, tormented or otherwise, with their hair, including women who've lost it through illness, etc. So I think that if anybody dips into this book and only reads one chapter, it should be the chapter called Hair is Not for Sissies.
And what a week for us to be discussing this, because obviously one of the big stories and then the memes of the week has been Chris Rock getting a snot clap from Will Smith. And the reason for it is because Jada Pinkett Smith has alopecia. I think that's how you pronounce it, which is when you go alopecia. And I have a colleague whose daughter has it, and she's been tweeting that it's a really serious condition, which has multiple outcomes, and I suppose that's what he's responding to, even though he has apologized that he's Will Smith. So a question from Fiona Ford. I loved your book for its wit and its sadness. Just wondering if writing the book helped you deal with aging and your outlook to it and yourself. And post the book, what now in terms of your writing?
Oh, that's lovely, Fiona. Definitely. I mean, I didn't start this book because I thought it was going to be in any way cathartic or some sort of self-therapy session. But it actually was. And what did I learn? That I could write a book. And again, more broadly, any woman out there who's sort of thinking of making changes to her career, her working life, really just go do it because you can. So what did I learn about myself? So that I'm fine, I'm doing fine, but there's always room for improvement. And I never want to stop learning.
And writing, Charlotte, like you say, that's your thing. You don't need a full-time job. That is your identity.
Yeah, I think that's really my core talent, identity. And it was really hard to get into the publishing system in the UK, which is where I was published. It was really hard to get an agent. It was really hard for her to sell the book to a publisher. It took another 2 years. So now I'm in the system, and like the sort of the venal journalist I am, it's like I'm gonna write another book because like a lot of journalists are sort of driven by fear, really. So I've just had a meeting with my publisher. He's like, right, what's next? And I'm like, it'll come to me. It'll come to me in a dream. But
that's
I'm
lovely.
going to write another book.
Of course, you must for your many fans. So I don't know if I'm saying a confidence here, but at some point you told me that you're going to write a story on being a gran, and I love the story about Coco. If you'd share with us, and then there's quite a few questions in the chat.
Oh, la, la. Well, first of all, I'm absolutely not going to write a book about being a gran anymore.
No,
Ferial.
okay.
I've decided that's a couple of paragraphs. And I think one of the things I realized in the book was becoming a grandmother is one of the most wonderful things that ever happened to me. And these little children are shaping my story in ways I could once barely have imagined. But that is not my core identity. And also, I think that everyone's sick of my midlife crisis now. So no, I'll probably be writing a fiction, and it'll probably have absolutely nothing to do with me.
Okay.
What was the next part of your question? I've forgotten.
It was not what the next. Okay, I'll come back to that. So Danny asked, how long did writing the initial manuscript take, and how long the edit? And also, I know lots of people want to write the books. And how do you find an agent, and how do you crack the global market as you have done? From Vishanti, thank you, Charlotte. Writing is indeed a powerful way of healing for self and for others.
Absolutely. How long did it take me to write? I guess the idea of the book started in my early 50s when all of these changes we've spoken about started happening. But to actually, so it was sort of making notes and sort of, drawing boards on walls and things. But it didn't really get going, I have to confess, for a good couple of years, by which time I was getting older and thought, this is great because now I've got more material because I'm older and I've had more disasters and catastrophes happening. So, I just kept going with writing things down and interviewing people and having conversations. So I guess I finished the manuscript in 2018. I went looking for an agent. All you have to do is buy the big book of, it's called The Artist's Something. It's like an old-fashioned telephone directory with every single agent listed. I mean, you can get it online now. Because obviously agents have, there's the agents who only deal with crime fiction. There are agents who deal with chick lit or history or young adult fiction. So obviously you have to sort of pick out a few who might be interested in something like my book, a memoir-ish slice of life. Got rejected by about 15 of them. But
how do you deal with rejection, Charlotte?
Fine, actually. I mean, again, I'm a journalist. I take direction. I mean, fine. I was fine with it because I got some very, very nice pink slips that went into some detail about why this wasn't for them.
How very useful that must be.
It was so very useful. And again, once I had the agent and spent another 2 years with her coaching and editing me, I got about 15, 20, no more, rejections from publishers. And Judith, my agent, said, I'm going to send these to you. And I'm like, I don't want to see them. Why would I want to see 25 rejections? And she was like, because they're going to be very useful for you. And they were. And most of them were very, very flattering and complimentary and liked it. But for one reason or another, they either had somebody very much more famous than me, like Callum Moran. Her publisher turned me down because she'd just written her midlife book. And obviously I couldn't stand up under any kind of known scrutiny next to her. So they were very useful. And then, lovely Atlantic Books decided to take a chance on me. Yeah,
it's fabulous. So some great questions I want to share with you before we begin wrapping. Jamie Darko, do you feel that the evolution of the South African context has also informed your experience of your own evolution into middle age? Do you think that you needed that physical change of place to realize the mental and emotional changes you were also going through?
Oh, what a fascinating question.
What a great question.
I'm really thinking it through as you speak.
Tell me if you need me to say it again.
No, but I'd love to read it. I mean, could you say it again? Because it's so interesting.
Of course, it's really interesting. Do you feel that the evolution of the South African context has also informed your experience of your own evolution into middle age? Do you think that you needed that physical change of place to realize the mental and emotional changes that you were also going through? I guess, did you need that time alone in a different place?
I mean, the short answer is yes, absolutely. How very well put. At the same time, because I do divide my time between Johannesburg and France, and and I spend quite a lot of time here, not least now I've got grandchildren, etc., that I'm so much more comfortable being here in Johannesburg than I was 10 years ago. And maybe that's some kind of continuing evolution that is a bit the other way around. The things I mean, yeah, this is an edgy, interesting, difficult place. But I feel so much better being here for the periods that I'm here than I did. Yeah,
that's really interesting. And so you say short answer, you needed to make that change.
that physical change of place. Great question.
And was it difficult to take that alone time? I've just come out of a course where I moderated a poem by Lao Tzu, which says it's so important to empty yourself, to be alone, to allow empty spaces. I wish I'd brought the poem with me today. Sometimes I find it really difficult when you give yourself that time.
Absolutely. 100% agree. I'm somebody who'd never really spent much time on my own. And I think that was quite deliberate. I mean, apart from being lucky enough to be surrounded by people who still wanted to surround me. So it really was the first time I'd ever been absolutely alone. To just sort of like, I didn't enjoy my own company at all. I didn't particularly like my own company, and I realized that it was easy to keep very busy, and that if you kept on moving, if you just busied yourself with work, whatever, and never stopped and never sat down and never kind of turned in, everything was great as long as you kind of stayed on the surface and stayed with the externals. But after, long, hard struggle with my own personality and company, now I need that space. I need to spend time on my own. So that was a huge shift.
For me, it's been quite difficult admitting that actually I need time on my own. I need hours sometime. And it's a gift when you find the voice to say I need it. So from Esther Ramani, there is something very liberating about getting rid of youngish clothes and also realizing you no longer have events to go to which require you to dress up. From Vishanti, a question. Charlotte, what do you think about authors self-publishing? It's not easy to secure the interest of an agent if one is unknown in the literary world. So I want to share something here, Charlotte. Lots of people come to me with manuscripts, usually memoir, and these are all stories which deserve to be told. My uncle's one of them. Luckily, he got his published. And often they have notes back from publishing houses saying memoir's not so big anymore. What do you think of self-publishing?
Fantastic. I think I wasn't brave enough actually to self-publish. Again, perhaps because of my past professional career, I only saw value in anything I did if somebody else saw it. It sounds a bit crazy. So yeah, why not self-publish? I mean, I think it's wonderful that technology and those audiences exist now. And I can't think of anyone off the top of my head. Somebody can tell me. There have been some very successful.
I just want to think of the name. There's the author who's written what's become a telenovela now, The Wife, who self-published because she couldn't find interest. And it's like the phenomenon. It's going to be on at the Franschhoek Literary Festival. And if you write to me, I'll just get you the names of a couple of authors who have really done very well. So, Charles, as we begin to wrap, Palesa Vilakazi, I'm happy to be part of this webinar. The information will help me as a person and will enhance my interaction with patients in my line of work. I can't wait to read the book. one thing menopause has opened up my eyes to is the fact that many middle-aged women are sometimes diagnosed with mental illnesses without considering where they are in life.
Brilliantly put.
That's so true, Palesa. So now I'm going to read my favorite bit, and then we'll close with you reading a little bit from your epiphanies. So this part is called the fuck it list. Every woman over 50 needs a fuck it list because we're still too young for a bucket list. Compiling my own list of fuck its has been incredibly liberating, a sort of manifesto in progress of all the things I don't want to do. Probably never wanted to do, and refuse to ever do again. Obligations that are a complete waste of time, that I'll never get back. People and places I have absolutely no desire to visit before I die. My list grows as it goes. I ask my friends to share their own bucket list with me, and I've been inspired. So Charlotte, here, I'm going to do a few. We won't stay up till midnight on New Year's Eve or go to anything that starts after 8 p.m. We won't make small talk with taxi drivers. We won't spend more than 1 minute in a museum speculating about whether a fragment of Stone Age rock was used as a paring knife. We won't spend more than 1 minute at an art exhibition pretending to be fascinated by a burst bin liner and wondering if the artist is as big a disappointment to his or her parents. We won't answer the phone or the doorbell just before it rings, or your WhatsApp just before it pings, right, Charles? We won't go to India just because everyone says it's a deeply liberating experience. So this was so inspiring to me, Charlotte Bauer. I started making my own, and it's been wonderful. So as I say goodbye to you, I wondered if you'd share with us a few of your epiphanies.
Indeed, and I'd love to see anybody's additions to that bucket list, including yours, of course, Ferial. Epiphanies, things I know to be simple and true these days. Values I do strive to live by even when I don't succeed, which is quite often. Becoming a better person is hard work, but you have to show up, even if you're late. It's impossible to be happy all the time, which puts the bad days in perspective. Compassion and kindness are sacred, but they really take practice. Laughter is essential, preferably at one's own expense. Faith is good, and doubt is unavoidable.
Thank you very much. So for those who asked, How to Get Over Being Young by Charlotte Bauer is available in Daily Maverick shop. It's also in bookshops. It's also on the Amazon Kindle. Very good luck to you, Charlotte, with the next book. I continue to learn from you, love what you're doing, and still want to be you. And thank you very much to everybody who joined us for sharing with us your thoughts and your comments. It's been marvelous, and I hope you all get to write your books. Good luck, Charlotte, and have a great day.
Thank you all for having me. It's been great.
Thank you.
Cheers.